Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back in time, way back, to an era where dining wasn't just about delicious food, but often a test of endurance for your stomach. Imagine yourself there, lounging on a plush couch, a gentle breeze rustling through the open atrium, the scent of exotic spices mingling with something less appealing. You're at a grand Roman banquet, surrounded by the empire's elite, and the feast before you is, well, an experience. It's not just a meal, it's a full-blown sensory assault. And frankly, you probably wouldn't survive it without a serious case of indigestion, if not something far worse. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, tell me, where are you tuning in from? And what time is it there? I love seeing how far and wide our Sleepy History community stretches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You settle onto the cushioned triclinium, a low-slung couch designed for reclining while you eat, not unlike a modern-day chaise lounge, but much less hygienic. This isn't a quick bite at the kitchen counter. This is an all-night affair, a marathon of consumption. The air is thick with the murmur of conversation, the clinking of goblets, and an olfactory landscape that truly defies modern description. You might catch a whiff of roasted meats, perhaps some exotic fruits, but underpinning it all is a pungent, unmistakable aroma garum. It's everywhere. This fermented fish sauce, made from the guts of fish left to rot in the sun, was the ketchup, the salt, the universal seasoning of the Roman world. You try to breathe through your mouth, but it's no use. The essence of garum permeates the very air you breathe. It's in the dishes, drizzled over vegetables, mixed into sauces, and probably even on the hands of the servants. Imagine a potent mix of anchovies, old socks, and something vaguely metallic. That's your baseline for Roman cuisine tonight. As the first course arrives, carried in by slaves, you lean forward, intrigued. It's a platter of dormice. Not cute little furry creatures, but plump, specially fattened ones, roasted and drizzled with honey and poppy seeds. Your stomach clenches a little. You're trying to be polite, to fit in, but the sight of their tiny glazed bodies is unsettling. Yet, everyone around you is reaching for them, popping them into their mouths with evident relish. You pick one up, its fur surprisingly intact, and take a hesitant bite. It's sweet, almost cloyingly so, with a gamey undertone. You force a smile, trying to look appreciative, but secretly, you're just trying not to gag. This is just the beginning. You remind yourself, this is how the Romans feasted. The courses continue to arrive, each one more bewildering than the last. You're presented with a dish of flamingo tongues, surprisingly delicate, but their vibrant color, even cooked, is a little off-putting. Then there's the sow's udder, stuffed with sea urchins and served cold. You eye it with trepidation, the texture promising to be gelatinous and the flavor profile a challenge. The sheer variety of ingredients used by the Romans truly stands out as a common historical fact. They weren't afraid to experiment, to combine flavors and textures in ways that would make modern chefs scratch their heads. It wasn't just about sustenance, it was about display, about showing off wealth and status through the sheer audacity of your menu. Your host, a plump, jovial senator, beams at your apparent enjoyment, oblivious to your internal struggle. He gestures for you to try a mouthful of some concoction that looks suspiciously like a mix of brains and eggs. You manage a polite refusal, citing a sudden, mysterious aversion to that. One detail that often gets overlooked in the grandeur of Roman banquets is the sheer lack of proper refrigeration. Everything you're eating has been prepared, in many cases, hours beforehand. And with the Roman climate, things spoil quickly. A lesser-known detail is the Roman reliance on elaborate spices and strong flavors, not just for taste, but also to mask the taste of food that was on the verge of turning. Think of all that garum, those pungent herbs, the liberal use of vinegar. They weren't just for culinary flair, they were practical solutions to a persistent problem. You might be tasting the freshness of the ingredients, or you might be tasting a master chef's ability to disguise the onset of decay. It's a gamble with every bite. You can almost feel the bacteria having their own little party in your mouth. As the hours drag on, the wine flows freely. Roman wine, unlike modern varieties, was often thick and syrupy, cut with water, and frequently flavored with resin, honey, or even seawater. You take a sip, and the sticky sweetness coats your tongue, followed by a faint, pine-like aftertaste. It's an acquired taste, to say the least. The more you drink, the more your inhibitions start to loosen, and the less disgusting the dormice and sow's udder seem. This, you realize, is part of the Roman strategy. Get your guests tipsy, and they'll be less discerning about the peculiar delicacies on offer. The entertainment for the evening begins. A troupe of acrobats performs daring feats, followed by a poet reciting long, epic verses. The sounds of the banquet blend into a drowsy hum. You watch, half listening, your attention occasionally drawn back to the table as another bizarre dish is presented. There's a whole roasted boar, its skin glistening, with live thrushes bursting out of its belly when cut open. A truly theatrical, if somewhat disturbing, spectacle. The aroma of roasted meat is momentarily comforting, a familiar scent in this strange culinary landscape. You wonder how much effort went into crafting these elaborate presentations, more works of art than simple meals. The conversation around you veers from political gossip to philosophical debates. You catch snippets of discussion about the latest gladiatorial games, the rising cost of grain, and the proper way to sacrifice to Jupiter. It's a fascinating window into Roman society, a reminder that even amidst the gastronomic excesses, these were real people with real concerns. Yet, the underlying theme of the evening is always consumption, a celebration of abundance, a display of power. You notice how effortlessly your Roman companions consume, their stomachs seemingly immune to the culinary roller coaster. Perhaps it's a lifetime of exposure, or perhaps their digestive systems are just built differently. You start to feel a subtle discomfort in your stomach. It's not outright pain, just a dull ache, a churning sensation that suggests a rebellion brewing within. You discreetly loosen the ties on your tunic. The rich, fatty foods, the copious amounts of wine, and the sheer volume of consumption are taking their toll. You remember reading about the Roman concept of vomitoriums, those infamous rooms where guests would purportedly go to relieve themselves and make room for more food. Historians still debate whether true vomitoriums, as we imagine them today for purposeful purging, actually existed in Roman homes for this specific purpose, or if the term simply referred to the entranceways where crowds vomited forth from amphitheaters. It's more likely that any purging was done more discreetly, perhaps into a basin or with the assistance of an emetic, rather than in a dedicated communal room. Still, the idea lingers in your mind, a testament to the sheer quantity of food that was expected to be consumed at these lavish events. The urge to find a quiet corner, or perhaps a large shrub, grows stronger with each passing course. The final dishes are brought out an array of exotic fruits, rich pastries, and more wine. You decline the pastries, your stomach signaling a clear protest. You nibble on some dates, their sweetness a welcome contrast to the savory, greasy dishes that preceded them. The night is drawing to a close, the flickering lamps casting long shadows across the triclinium. You feel a sense of relief, but also a strange fascination. You've just experienced a Roman banquet, a true immersion into their culinary world. And it was every bit as strange, opulent, and stomach-churning as the history books promised. As you contemplate the sheer audacity of some of the dishes, you can't help but wonder about the Roman digestive system. Did they truly enjoy these elaborate, often disturbing, meals? Or was it simply a matter of status and societal expectation? The morning after a Roman banquet, you wake with a distinct metallic taste in your mouth and a dull throb behind your eyes. Your stomach feels unsettled, to say the least. It's a feeling that resonates with anyone who's ever overindulged, but amplified by the unique concoctions of the previous night. You recall the lingering scent of garum, that omnipresent fermented fish sauce that seasoned nearly every dish. It wasn't just a condiment, it was a cultural cornerstone, a symbol of Roman culinary identity. Imagine if every single dish you ate today, from your morning toast to your evening steak, had a pungent, fishy undertone. That was the reality for the Romans. This ubiquitous sauce, made from fish entrails left to ferment in the sun, could be both a culinary enhancer and, to the uninitiated palate, a gastronomic nightmare. You wonder how they developed such a taste for it, or perhaps how they tolerated it. Your throat feels a little raw, probably from the strong, unadulterated wines that were served. Roman wine, often thick, sweet, and mixed with water, or sometimes even seawater or resin for preservation, was a far cry from the balanced vintages we enjoy today. The previous night's libations felt less like a fine drink and more like a concentrated syrup. You recall taking sip after sip, trying to quench your thirst, only to find the sweetness almost cloying. You vaguely remember a conversation about the latest gladiator fights, punctuated by raucous laughter and the clinking of goblets. The Romans' ability to consume vast quantities of both food and drink, often to the point of excess, was truly remarkable. It wasn't merely about getting drunk, it was part of the social ritual, a demonstration of wealth and status. To host a lavish banquet meant providing an unending flow of sustenance and entertainment. And the more abundant, the better. As you slowly rouse yourself, you start to piece together more of the previous night's culinary journey. Beyond the dormice and the sow's udder, you remember a rather unsettling dish known as liquamen. This was a thinner, more refined version of garum, often used as a dipping sauce or as a base for other flavorings. You can still taste its salty, slightly fishy essence. Then there were the strange combinations sweet and savory, often in the same dish. Honey was a common ingredient, used not just in desserts, but also in savory meat dishes, creating a flavor profile that would send a modern chef into an existential crisis. Imagine a roasted chicken glazed with honey and then sprinkled with herbs and garum. It sounds like something from a dare, not a culinary delight. A common historical fact about Roman banquets is their emphasis on spectacle and display. It wasn't just about the food itself, but how it was presented. The live thrushes bursting from the roasted boar, the elaborate molds made of intricate jellies, the exotic birds, these were all designed to impress, to dazzle the guests, and to reinforce the host's status. Your host, the senator, had clearly spared no expense in showcasing his wealth and connections. He had even presented a peacock, roasted whole and then redressed with its feathers, its magnificent tail fanned out for dramatic effect. You recall the collective gasp of admiration from the other guests, even as you felt a pang of sympathy for the poor bird. These were not just meals, they were theatrical productions, each course a new act in a grand edible drama. One particularly odd detail that now resurfaces in your memory is the Roman fascination with specific internal organs. Beyond the sow's udder, you remember seeing dishes made from animal brains, livers, and even intestines. These were not considered offal in the way we might think of them today. They were delicacies, often prepared with great care and spiced heavily. A lesser-known detail is the Roman practice of force-feeding certain animals, not just to fatten them, but to enlarge specific organs deemed desirable. For instance, geese were often force-fed figs to enlarge their livers, a precursor to foie gras. Imagine the dedication, or perhaps the obsession, required to produce these gourmet ingredients. It speaks to a culinary culture that valued specific textures and flavors found in these organs. even if the methods of production were less than savory. The sheer volume of food consumed at these banquets also contributed to the digestive distress you're currently experiencing. It wasn't just a meal, it was a non-stop parade of dishes, from appetizers to main courses to desserts, lasting for hours on end. You remember feeling full after the first few courses, yet the food kept coming, and the social pressure to keep eating, or at least to appear to be enjoying yourself, was immense. You'd pick at a dish, take a small bite, and then another would arrive. It was a relentless assault on your stomach's capacity. You ponder how the Romans managed this nightly, or at least regularly. Did their digestive systems simply adapt to the constant influx of rich, heavy food, or did they all just suffer in silent discomfort? The price of social standing, the hygiene, or lack thereof. During these banquets is also something to consider. While your host likely had slaves to wash hands and keep things tidy, the general understanding of germs and sanitation was rudimentary at best. Food was often handled with bare hands, and while you might have had a napkin, the concept of widespread hand washing or sterile environments was centuries away. You recall noticing a few flies buzzing around some of the uncovered dishes, a common sight in the Roman heat. It adds another layer to your current queasiness. Historians still debate the true impact of Roman hygiene practices on their overall health and longevity, with some arguing that their advanced aqueduct systems and public baths somewhat mitigated the risks, while others emphasize the prevalence of diseases linked to poor sanitation. You can only imagine the kind of stomach bugs that must have swept through Roman society with alarming regularity, especially after large public feasts. As you slowly make your way to a nearby basin, your body aches from hours of reclining in an unnatural position. The Roman triclinium might have looked comfortable, but it wasn't designed for ergonomic support. You recall trying to shift positions discreetly throughout the night, attempting to alleviate the growing numbness in your limbs. The slaves attending to you had been remarkably attentive, constantly refilling your goblet and offering new dishes, their faces impassive. You wonder what they thought of these lavish displays of consumption, day in and day out. Did they ever get to sample these exotic dishes? Or were they relegated to simpler fare, the lingering taste of rich, gamey meats, infused with that unforgettable garum, still coats your palate? You remember trying a dish of roasted lampreys, an eel-like fish, served in a sauce made from their own blood? That was a truly challenging moment. You managed to swallow a small piece, trying to appear nonchalant, but the texture and the idea of it sent shivers down your spine. The Roman penchant for using animal blood in their cooking was another aspect that feels alien to modern sensibilities. It was used as a thickener, a flavor enhancer, and sometimes as a central ingredient, creating rich, dark sauces that were both intriguing and, for you, frankly terrifying. As the morning light streams through the windows, you realize that your Roman banquet experience was less about culinary delight and more about cultural immersion. It was a journey into a world where food was a statement, a spectacle, and sometimes a literal stomach churner. You're grateful for the comfort of your own bed and the thought of a simple, bland meal. Perhaps just some bread and water. Sounds like the most appealing thing in the world right now. The excesses of Rome, while fascinating to observe, are certainly not for the faint of heart or stomach. You reflect on the sheer resilience of the Roman digestive system, or perhaps their remarkable tolerance for discomfort. The lingering taste of garum and the phantom discomfort in your gut serve as a constant reminder of last night's Roman feast. You've survived, but your digestive system feels like it's been through a gladiatorial arena. Today, you're forced to confront the very real, very unglamorous aftermath of such a lavish display of Roman excess. While modern medicine provides quick fixes for an upset stomach, the Romans had to contend with a more limited pharmacopoeia, often relying on herbal remedies or, more drastically, induced vomiting. You shudder at the thought of the latter, remembering the subtle hints of discomfort that rippled through the banqueting hall as the night wore on. One of the more enduring, and often misunderstood, aspects of Roman dining is the concept of the vomitorium. We often envision grand halls where Romans would openly purge themselves to continue feasting. A truly grotesque image. However, the reality is far less dramatic and significantly more practical. A common historical fact is that the word vomitorium actually refers to the entrance and exit passages in an amphitheater or theater, through which large crowds of people could vomit forth or be discharged quickly. It has nothing to do with physical vomiting, at least not in the sense of a dedicated room for it. This popular misconception likely arose from later interpretations and perhaps a bit of sensationalism. However, that doesn't mean Romans didn't induce vomiting. They certainly did. But it was a far more private, and probably less frequent, affair than the popular myth suggests. If a guest felt truly ill from overeating, they might discreetly slip away, perhaps to a private chamber or a secluded corner of the garden. Often with the assistance of an attendant, they might use a feather to tickle their throat or consume an emetic, a substance designed to induce vomiting. This wasn't a casual part of the dining experience. It was a necessary, though perhaps embarrassing, measure to alleviate acute discomfort. You can almost picture yourself, pale and sweating, trying to make an inconspicuous exit last night, hoping no one noticed your distress. The sheer volume of food consumed was, no doubt, a major contributing factor to digestive woes. Roman banquets were not about small, refined portions. They were about abundance, about showing off the host's wealth and generosity. Imagine course after course arriving, each one more elaborate and rich than the last. You felt a social obligation to sample everything, to show appreciation. Even as your stomach groaned in protest, this constant influx of rich, fatty, and often heavily spiced food would overwhelm even the most robust digestive system. It was a caloric assault, a test of your body's limits. And frankly, you failed spectacularly. Beyond the sheer quantity, the quality and preparation of the food also played a significant role in digestive distress. With no refrigeration, food could spoil quickly in the warm Roman climate. While powerful spices like garum and herbs could mask the taste of slightly off food, they couldn't eliminate the underlying bacterial issues. A lesser-known detail about Roman food preparation is the extensive use of lead in cooking and serving vessels. Lead was commonly used in Roman pottery and even to sweeten wine, as lead acetate has a sweet taste. This widespread exposure to lead would have contributed to chronic health problems, including digestive issues, over time. So, not only were you eating food that might be on the verge of spoiling, but you were also potentially ingesting a slow-acting poison with every bite. The thought makes your stomach churn anew. Consider the aftermath for Roman society as a whole. While the elite could afford lavish banquets, they likely suffered from a range of digestive ailments, from chronic indigestion to more severe conditions caused by their diet. Gout, a painful form of arthritis linked to high purine diets, was common among the wealthy Romans. You can almost see your plump senator host from last night, perhaps nursing a swollen, painful toe this morning, a direct consequence of his extravagant lifestyle. Historians still debate the precise role of diet in the decline of Roman health and longevity, with some scholars arguing that lead poisoning, often exacerbated by dietary habits, played a significant role, while others emphasize the impact of infectious diseases and general sanitation. It's a complex picture, but it's clear that their eating habits, while grand, were not always conducive to long-term health. The lack of modern plumbing and sanitation further compounded the health risks. While wealthy Romans had latrines, they weren't always as hygienic as one might hope. Waste disposal was a constant challenge, and the spread of waterborne diseases was a persistent threat. You remember the communal nature of some Roman latrines, where people would conduct their business side by side. It paints a vivid, if somewhat gross, picture of public health in the ancient world. When you combine this with the questionable food preparation and the sheer volume of rich, potentially spoiled food, it's a wonder anyone at these banquets made it through unscathed. You begin to recall the various methods Romans used to try and alleviate their discomfort. Beyond induced vomiting, they might have consumed various herbal concoctions, perhaps mixtures of mint, fennel, or other carminatives known to aid digestion. Some might have sought relief at the public baths, believing that the hot water and sweating could cleanse their systems. Others might have simply resorted to fasting for a day or two after a particularly egregious feast, giving their digestive systems a much-needed break. The simple act of eating less, a concept often lost in the pursuit of Roman opulence. The thought of going through another such banquet fills you with dread. The allure of historical immersion quickly fades when confronted with the practical realities of ancient living. You appreciate the modern conveniences of refrigeration, food safety standards, and over-the-counter antacids like never before. The Roman banquet, while a fascinating historical phenomenon, was undeniably a trial by fire for your stomach, a test you barely passed. You feel a pang of sympathy for the Roman elite, trapped in a cycle of culinary excess that likely led to chronic discomfort and illness. Their feasts were symbols of power and status, but they came at a considerable physical cost. As the lingering effects of the Roman banquet slowly subside, you find yourself pondering the broader implications of their peculiar culinary habits, not just on individual stomachs, but on the overall health and well-being of the Roman population. It's easy to get caught up in the sensational details of dormice and garum, but there's a deeper story here about how food, wealth, and health intersected in the ancient world. You realize that your personal discomfort was just a fleeting glimpse into a systemic issue for the Romans, particularly the elite. The Roman diet, particularly among the wealthy, was remarkably rich in protein and fat, and often lacked in fresh vegetables and fruits in sufficient quantities, especially outside of the summer months. While they certainly ate vegetables, the emphasis at banquets was on meat, often exotic and in vast quantities. Imagine consuming multiple courses of roasted meats, boar, venison, fowl, all heavily sauced and spiced. This kind of diet, sustained over a lifetime, would undoubtedly lead to a range of health issues we now associate with modern Western diets. You can almost feel your arteries hardening just thinking about it. One of the most common ailments associated with the Roman elite's diet was gout. This painful form of arthritis is caused by an excess of uric acid in the blood, which can crystallize in the joints, most commonly the big toe. Foods rich in purines, like red meat, organ meats, and alcohol, are major contributors. Given the Roman elite's penchant for lavish banquets brimming with these very items, it's no surprise that gout was prevalent among them. You picture the senator from last night, perhaps struggling to walk this morning, a swollen, inflamed toe throbbing in silent agony. It was the price of luxury, a visible, painful manifestation of their excessive consumption. Beyond gout, the sheer richness of the diet likely contributed to other issues. Obesity would have been a common sight among the wealthy, a symbol of their prosperity and leisure. While we might view obesity as a health risk today, in Roman times, a certain plumpness was often seen as a sign of affluence, indicating that you could afford to eat well. However, this outward appearance of prosperity undoubtedly came with internal health consequences. Heart disease, diabetes, and other metabolic disorders would have been silently afflicting the Roman elite, even if they lacked the medical understanding to diagnose them as such. A common historical fact about Roman health is the emphasis on public baths. These were not just places for hygiene, but also social centers, where Romans could exercise, socialize, and relax. While admirable, the widespread use of public baths also presented its own set of challenges regarding public health. While bathing was good, the communal nature of these spaces meant that diseases could spread easily, especially with so many people congregating in close quarters, often sharing water. You can imagine how a simple cough could quickly turn into a widespread respiratory illness in such an environment. So, while they had impressive infrastructure for water, the understanding of germ theory was, of course, millennia away. Then there's the issue of Roman wine. While it might seem less harmful than fermented fish guts, the way Romans consumed and prepared their wine also had health implications. As you remember, it was often thick and sweet, frequently mixed with honey or even lead acetate, which has a sweet taste and was sometimes used to improve flavor or preserve wine. A lesser-known detail about Roman winemaking is the practice of boiling wine in lead pots to reduce its acidity and sweeten it, unknowingly leading to chronic lead poisoning among regular consumers. This practice, while seemingly innocuous at the time, would have slowly but surely introduced lead into the bodies of those who drank it. Lead poisoning can manifest in a variety of ways, including severe abdominal pain often mistaken for other ailments, neurological problems, and even death in severe cases. You wonder how many Roman emperors, senators, and citizens suffered from mysterious illnesses that were, in fact, symptoms of slow lead poisoning. This brings us to a crucial point. Historians still debate the extent to which lead poisoning contributed to the decline of the Roman Empire. Some scholars argue that widespread lead exposure, particularly among the elite who had greater access to lead-sweetened wine and lead plumbing, led to decreased cognitive function, infertility, and general ill health, thus weakening the empire from within. Others suggest that while lead poisoning was undoubtedly a problem, its impact was not significant enough to be a primary cause of the empire's downfall, citing other factors like political instability, economic woes, and barbarian invasions as more crucial. It's a complex and fascinating area of academic discussion, highlighting the long-term, often unseen, consequences of everyday practices. The Roman fascination with certain animals also had health consequences. While dormice and lampreys might seem exotic, the methods used to procure and prepare them could be risky. Wild game could carry parasites, and without proper cooking, these could be transferred to humans. The lack of understanding about foodborne illnesses meant that a seemingly delicious meal could turn into a serious health hazard. You think back to the roasted peacock, a symbol of opulence, and wonder how thoroughly it was cooked, given its elaborate presentation. Even their understanding of medicine, while advanced for its time, was still rudimentary by modern standards. While Roman physicians like Galen made significant contributions, they lacked the fundamental understanding of microbiology and sanitation that we have today. Their remedies often involved herbal concoctions, bloodletting, or various purgatives, which might have offered temporary relief but rarely addressed the root cause of many illnesses. So, when a Roman nobleman suffered from severe indigestion or chronic gout, their options for effective treatment were limited. In essence, the Roman banquet, while a grand spectacle of wealth and power, was also a health hazard in disguise. The rich, fatty foods, the peculiar ingredients, the dubious hygiene practices, and the unwitting exposure to lead all combined to create a diet that was both a luxury and a liability. Your own experience of indigestion, while unpleasant, pales in comparison to the chronic health struggles many wealthy Romans likely faced throughout their lives. It's a stark reminder that sometimes, too much of a good thing, especially when that good thing involves fermented fish guts and lead-laced wine, can be very, very bad. As you continue to reflect on the Roman banquet, your mind drifts from the general health implications to the truly extravagant and often revolting dishes reserved specifically for the Roman upper crust. This wasn't just about eating, it was about conspicuous consumption, a flamboyant display of wealth and power that often bordered on the absurd. You recall the peacock, painstakingly reassembled with its feathers, and realize that was just the tip of the iceberg of their culinary ostentation. For the wealthiest Romans, the rarer and more difficult an ingredient was to obtain, the more desirable it became. Imagine a dish made from the brains of ostriches or the tongues of nightingales. These weren't just expensive because of their scarcity, they were status symbols, a way to show off that you could afford to consume something so utterly frivolous and hard to acquire. You can almost hear the whispered admiration, or perhaps veiled jealousy, from the other guests as such a dish was presented. It wasn't about taste, it was about spectacle and bragging rights. One particularly infamous example of Roman culinary excess was the Trojan hog. This was a whole roasted pig, but not just any pig. Its belly was stuffed with an assortment of smaller roasted birds and sausages. giving the impression that the pig was giving birth to them when carved. The name itself, a reference to the Trojan horse, highlighted the theatricality of the dish. You can almost hear the gasp of delight from the guests as the knife plunged in, revealing the hidden treasures within. It's a grotesque image, yet undeniably impressive in its execution. This wasn't just cooking, it was culinary performance art, designed to shock and awe. Then there were the culinary illusions. Roman chefs, or cochi, were masters of deception. They would often prepare dishes to look like something else entirely, playing tricks on the diner's eyes. Imagine a plate of seafood arranged to look like a perfectly roasted joint of meat, or a dessert shaped like a miniature temple. These weren't just visual gags. They demonstrated the chef's skill and the host's ability to afford such artistic talent. A common historical fact about Roman cooking is the emphasis on intricate presentation, often to create visual surprises for the guests. It added another layer of entertainment to the already elaborate banquets, turning a meal into a game of guess the ingredient. You recall the conversation around the table last night, snippets about imported spices from distant lands. Roman trade routes brought in exotic ingredients from across their vast empire, and beyond black pepper from India, cinnamon from Ceylon, modern-day Sri Lanka, and saffron from the Near East. These weren't just flavorings, they were incredibly expensive, and their presence on a banquet table was a clear sign of immense wealth. The more exotic the spice, the more prestigious the dish. You can almost smell the faint, musky scent of ground pepper mingling with the pervasive garum, an olfactory testament to Roman global reach. A lesser-known detail about Roman banquets is the use of live animals in the dining hall, not just for consumption, but as part of the decor or entertainment. Sometimes, fish would swim in small, ornate tanks on the table, only to be caught and cooked moments before serving, ensuring ultimate freshness and perhaps a bit of cruelty. Or perhaps small birds would flit around, adding to the atmosphere. While perhaps quaint to some, it also highlights a certain disregard for animal welfare that would be unthinkable in most modern dining settings. It speaks to a society that saw nature, including living creatures, as resources to be exploited for entertainment and pleasure. The sheer labor involved in preparing these elaborate feasts was immense. Think of the legions of slaves required: those who hunted and trapped the exotic animals, those who meticulously prepared each ingredient, the chefs who concocted these grand dishes, and the dozens of servants who waited on the guests. The cost, not just in ingredients but in human labor, would have been astronomical. Every dish served was a testament to the host's vast resources and his control over a significant workforce. It reminds you that the opulence of the Roman elite was built upon the backs of countless unseen laborers. As you consider the elaborate nature of these feasts, you recognize that they served a vital social and political function. Banquets were not just about eating, they were about networking, forging alliances, and displaying social standing. A well-executed banquet could elevate a host's reputation, solidify his political power, and impress his peers. It was a stage where performances unfolded, both culinary and social. You remember the subtle power plays, the veiled insults, and the strategic compliments exchanged around the table last night, all under the guise of convivial feasting. Historians still debate the true motivations behind the extreme culinary excesses of the Roman elite. Were they genuinely Epicureans, driven by a pure love of food and flavor? Or was it primarily a cynical display of status and power, with taste being a secondary consideration? Some argue that the Romans genuinely enjoyed these bizarre combinations and rich flavors, while others suggest that the pressure to constantly outdo one another in extravagance drove them to increasingly outlandish culinary creations. It's likely a combination of both. A society where personal taste became intertwined with social obligation and competitive display. You recall the moment last night when a particularly unappetizing dish was presented, perhaps something involving entrails or obscure aquatic creatures. You tried to maintain a polite smile, nodding approvingly, even as your stomach rebelled. The pressure to conform, to appreciate the host's generosity, was palpable. It wasn't just a meal, It was a test of your social graces, a delicate dance of acceptance and appreciation. Regardless of your true feelings about the flamingo tongues or the stuffed sow's udder, and as you finally drift into a deeper, more peaceful sleep, you're grateful that your modern culinary experiences rarely involve such stomach-churning social gymnastics. Waking up this morning, you're still reeling from the extravagant and frankly stomach-upsetting journey into Roman high society. The memory of roasted dormice and lead-laced wine lingers like a bad aftertaste. But as you recover from the elite's excesses, your mind naturally turns to the vast majority of Romans who never stepped foot inside a lavish triclinium or tasted peacock brains. What did the common Roman citizen eat? How did their daily meals compare to the gastronomic extravaganzas of the wealthy? You're about to discover that the commoner's table, while far less glamorous, was likely much healthier and certainly less prone to inducing an immediate trip to an imaginary vomitorium. For the average Roman, diet was dictated by necessity, availability, and affordability. Forget exotic spices from India or flamingo tongues from distant lands. Their meals were built on staples grains, vegetables, and legumes. Bread was, without a doubt, the cornerstone of the Roman diet, made from various grains like wheat or barley. It was often coarse, dense, and baked in communal ovens. You can almost smell the earthy aroma of freshly baked bread wafting through the streets of ancient Rome, a far more comforting scent than the pervasive garum. This bread was not the fluffy, refined white bread we know today. It was hearty, fibrous, and provided sustained energy. A stark contrast to the rich, indigestible concoctions of the elite. A common historical fact is that the Roman diet was primarily vegetarian, especially for the lower classes. Meat was expensive and therefore a luxury, consumed sparingly on special occasions or in smaller quantities. For the common Roman, protein came from other sources. Legumes like lentils, chickpeas, and beans were staples, providing essential nutrients. Imagine a simple stew, hearty and filling, made from a mix of these legumes, perhaps flavored with a few common herbs and a splash of olive oil. It sounds infinitely more appealing right now than another bite of sow's udder. Vegetables were abundant and varied, depending on the season and region: cabbage, onions, garlic, leeks, lettuce, and various root vegetables were all common fare. These would have been eaten raw, boiled, or stewed, providing essential vitamins and minerals. You picture a Roman market, bustling with vendors selling fresh produce, a vibrant scene that speaks to a more grounded, less ostentatious culinary culture. This emphasis on fresh seasonal produce meant a healthier, more balanced diet for most Romans, free from the rich fats and strange concoctions that plagued the wealthy. Olive oil was another fundamental component of the common Roman diet, used for cooking, seasoning, and even as a source of light. It was a healthy fat, providing energy and essential nutrients. Compare that to the often rendered animal fats used in elite cooking, which would have been far less beneficial. You can almost taste the peppery bitterness of fresh olive oil, a clean flavor that would cut through the richness of other ingredients. While garum was indeed popular across all social strata, its use among the poor might have been less liberal due to its cost, or they might have used cheaper, homemade versions. Instead of high-quality, aged garum, they might have resorted to simpler, less potent fish sauces, or relied more on salt and common herbs for flavoring. This likely meant less of that overwhelming fishy aroma that permeated your banquet experience, allowing other, more natural flavors to shine through. A lesser-known detail about the common Roman diet is the significant role of pulse, a thick porridge or gruel. This simple dish, made from boiled grains, often farro or barley and sometimes mixed with vegetables or legumes, was a daily staple, particularly for the poor and soldiers. It was easy to prepare, incredibly filling, and provided a sustained source of energy. Think of it as the ultimate comfort food, a warm, nourishing meal that was far removed from the elaborate, multi-course banquets of the elite. It highlights the stark contrast in daily sustenance between the two ends of the Roman social spectrum. Water was, of course, essential. And for Romans, access to clean water was often provided by their impressive aqueduct systems. While not always perfectly pure, it was a vast improvement over what many other ancient civilizations had access to. You might drink it plain, or mixed with a little vinegar for flavor, a simple thirst quencher after a day of labor. Meat, when consumed by commoners, would have been in smaller portions and often from cheaper sources, like pork or offal, or perhaps small game and birds caught locally. Fish was also a good source of protein, especially for those living near the coast or rivers. These would have been grilled, boiled, or stewed, with little of the elaborate preparation seen at elite feasts. The focus was on making the most of every part of the animal, minimizing waste, a sensible approach born of economic necessity. Historians still debate the overall health of the Roman commoner compared to the elite. While the elite suffered from diseases of affluence like gout and possibly lead poisoning, the commoners were more susceptible to infectious diseases due to crowded living conditions and less robust immune systems from hard labor. However, their diet, being more plant-based and less laden with rich fats and sugars, might have protected them from some of the chronic metabolic diseases that afflicted the wealthy. It's a complex trade-off, where different social classes faced different health challenges, both linked to their respective lifestyles and diets, in contrast to the hours-long, drawn-out banquets. The common Roman meal was likely a quick affair, eaten out of necessity to refuel for work. They wouldn't have had the leisure for lengthy reclining or elaborate entertainment. It was about practicality and sustenance. You can almost picture a Roman laborer, sitting on a stool by a street stall, quickly eating a bowl of pulse or a piece of bread with some cheese, before heading back to their duties. The simplicity of this commoner's diet also meant less risk of the acute digestive distress you experienced. Fewer exotic ingredients, less rich fat, and less sheer volume meant their bodies were likely under less strain. While they certainly faced their own health challenges, explosive indigestion from overindulgence was likely not one of their primary concerns. You find yourself feeling a strange sense of envy for their relatively uncomplicated relationship with food. Free from the social pressures and culinary excesses that defined the elite's dining experiences. It was a diet built on resilience, a quiet strength that contrasted sharply with the fragile stomachs of their opulent counterparts. The stark contrast between the gluttonous Roman banquets and the simple fare of the common citizen leads you to wonder about the very foundation of Roman cooking: the methods, the tools, and the underlying culinary chemistry that shaped their unique flavors. It's not just about what they ate, but how they transformed ingredients, often in ways that would baffle a modern chef. Your stomach still has faint echoes of the heavy, rich foods, and now you're trying to understand the process behind them. Roman kitchens, even in wealthy homes, were quite different from ours. They lacked the precise temperature controls of modern ovens and stovetops. Cooking was primarily done over open fires or in charcoal braziers, which required constant attention and skill to manage heat. Imagine trying to roast a whole boar, or even just a piece of meat, consistently over an open flame, without burning the outside while leaving the inside raw. It was a true art form, demanding years of experience from Roman cooks. You can almost feel the heat radiating from the open hearth, the smoky scent filling the air, a constant reminder of the raw power of fire. Grilling and roasting were common methods for meats and larger items, imparting a smoky flavor that would have been pervasive in Roman cuisine. Boiling and stewing were also widely used, especially for vegetables and legumes, and for creating those thick, savory sauces that were so characteristic of their dishes. Imagine a bubbling pot, simmering for hours, slowly reducing liquids and melding flavors into a rich, unctuous concoction. These slow cooking methods were essential for tenderizing tougher cuts of meat and for extracting maximum flavor from ingredients. One of the most defining characteristics of Roman culinary chemistry was their obsession with strong flavors. As you well remember, garum was king, its pungent, umami-rich profile appearing in almost everything. But it wasn't just garum. They used a wide array of herbs and spices, often in combinations that seem unusual to modern palates. Cumin, coriander, dill, lavish, mint, rue, and lazera plant extract, now extinct, were common. These weren't used subtly. They were often added in liberal quantities, creating bold, assertive flavors designed to stand out. You can almost taste the sharp, earthy notes of cumin, cutting through the richness of a roasted dish. A common historical fact about Roman cooking is their extensive use of various types of sauces. Roman food was rarely served plain. Instead, dishes were often drenched in complex sauces that combined sweet, sour, salty, and savory elements. These sauces were not just for flavor, they also helped to moisten dishes, preserve food, and, as you now suspect, mask less than fresh ingredients. They were a culinary art form in themselves, meticulously prepared and often the most prized part of a dish. The sweet and sour combination was particularly prevalent. They often mixed honey or defrutum grape must boiled down to a syrup with vinegar, wine, and various spices to create distinct flavor profiles. This blend of sweetness and acidity was a hallmark of Roman haute cuisine, creating a complexity that could be both intriguing and, for the modern palate, a bit jarring. Imagine a rich meat stew, infused with honey and vinegar, its flavors clashing and harmonizing in a way you wouldn't expect. A lesser-known detail about Roman culinary techniques is the practice of using contrasting temperatures and textures within a single dish. For example, they might serve hot meats with cold sauces, or soft, stewed vegetables alongside crunchy, fried elements. This wasn't just accidental, it was a deliberate choice to add layers of sensory experience to their meals. Think of a perfectly roasted piece of duck, served with a chilled, vinegary sauce, the warmth of the meat contrasting with the coolness of the sauce, creating a surprising and complex mouthfeel. This attention to detail speaks to a sophisticated, albeit alien, understanding of culinary pleasure. The Romans also excelled at preservation techniques. Out of necessity, salting, smoking, drying, and pickling were all common methods for extending the shelf life of food. This meant that even in winter, they could enjoy a variety of ingredients that had been harvested and preserved months earlier. While essential for survival, these methods also imparted specific flavors to the food, often adding a distinct saltiness or smokiness that became integral to the Roman palate. When it came to tools, Roman kitchens were functional but basic. Mortars and pestles were essential for grinding spices and herbs, and for preparing sauces. Various knives, ladles, and cooking pots, often made of bronze or earthenware, would have been standard. The lack of sophisticated kitchen appliances meant that much of the preparation was labor-intensive, relying on human skill and brute force. You can almost hear the rhythmic thump of a pestle in a mortar, as a cook patiently grinds herbs for a sauce. Historians still debate the true level of sophistication of Roman culinary techniques. Some argue that Roman cuisine, as described in texts like Apicius's De Re Coquinaria, represents a highly refined and innovative approach to cooking, pushing the boundaries of flavor and presentation. Others contend that, while elaborate, many of their combinations would be considered unpalatable by modern standards, and their sophistication was more in presentation than in true gastronomic excellence. It's an ongoing discussion, highlighting the subjective nature of taste across cultures and centuries. The act of dining in ancient Rome was not just about satisfying hunger, it was a complex interplay of flavors, textures, and aromas, shaped by specific cooking methods and tools. Your personal experience with their rich and often challenging dishes now has a deeper context. As you understand the culinary forces that shaped them, the Roman kitchen, far from being primitive, was a vibrant laboratory of flavors, constantly experimenting and pushing the boundaries of what was considered edible, and even delicious, by their own unique standards. And as you finally drift off, you can almost smell the faint, ghostly scent of smoky hearths and pungent garum, a testament to an ancient world where every meal was an adventure. As the echoes of Roman cooking methods fade, your mind, now accustomed to the peculiar rhythm of ancient life, turns to the truly unpleasant but unavoidable part of any grand banquet the morning after. Forget your usual minor hangover. The aftermath of a Roman feast was an experience in itself, filled with bodily protests and lingering discomfort. You recall the initial queasiness you felt this morning, and realize it was merely a polite greeting compared to what many Romans endured regularly. The most immediate and obvious consequence of a Roman banquet was, of course, the indigestion, your stomach, assaulted by rich fats, complex sauces, and the sheer volume of food, would have been in open rebellion. Imagine not just a simple stomach ache, but a profound sense of fullness, bloating, and gas that would persist for hours, if not an entire day. The mixture of sweet and savory, the heavily spiced meats, and the general lack of dietary fiber from refined bread, all combine to create a perfect storm for a profoundly unhappy digestive system. You can almost feel the phantom pressure building in your own abdomen. Then there was the inevitable headache, often a result of copious amounts of unrefined Roman wine. As you recall, Roman wine was often potent, thick, and sometimes laced with various additives, including lead acetate. The combination of alcohol and potential toxins would have hit your system hard, leaving you with a throbbing skull and a general feeling of malaise. Imagine waking up with your head pounding, your mouth dry, and every movement feeling like a monumental effort. This wasn't just a casual hangover, it was a full-body shutdown. A common historical fact about Roman feasting is the practice of drinking wine throughout the banquet, often diluted with water. While dilution might seem to lessen the impact, the sheer quantity consumed over many hours still ensured a significant intake of alcohol. The Romans didn't drink in short bursts, they engaged in marathon sessions, slowly but surely accumulating the effects of the wine. This sustained consumption was what truly delivered those morning-after headaches and dehydration. Beyond the immediate physical discomfort, there was also the distinct possibility of an actual foodborne illness. With rudimentary understanding of food hygiene, no refrigeration, and the practice of preparing dishes hours in advance, the risk of consuming spoiled or contaminated food was constant. You remember the flies from last night, buzzing around the uncovered dishes, and a shiver runs down your spine. A seemingly minor stomach upset could easily escalate into vomiting, diarrhea, and fever, leaving you completely incapacitated for days. This wasn't a rare occurrence. It was a constant threat lurking beneath the surface of every lavish meal. A lesser-known detail about the Roman morning after is the use of various emetics and purgatives for relief. While the vomitorium myth is debunked, Romans certainly used remedies to induce vomiting or bowel movements to cleanse their systems after overindulgence. They might have consumed strong herbal infusions, or even substances like hellebore, a potent emetic, to forcefully expel the contents of their stomach. Imagine the grim determination required to voluntarily make yourself sick, just to alleviate the even worse discomfort of extreme indigestion. It speaks volumes about the severity of their suffering. The recovery from such an event wasn't just physical, it also had social implications. You couldn't just call in sick from your duties as a senator or a wealthy merchant. You were expected to attend to your affairs, even if your stomach was roiling and your head was splitting. The ability to endure these physical challenges was, in its own way, a mark of stoicism, a testament to your Roman fortitude. You're expected to soldier on, even if your internal organs are staging a revolt. The day after a banquet would likely be filled with attempts at recovery. Perhaps a visit to the public baths, hoping the warm water and steam might somehow alleviate the discomfort. Or a light, simple meal, a stark contrast to the previous night's excess. You'd probably crave something bland, something to soothe your protesting gut. Perhaps just a little bread dipped in water, or a very thin gruel. The very thought of anything rich or heavily spiced would be enough to send you running in the other direction. Historians still debate the commonality and severity of chronic digestive issues among the Roman elite. While we have accounts of individual instances of overindulgence and related ailments, it's difficult to gauge how widespread or debilitating these conditions were on a daily basis. Some scholars suggest that the Romans simply developed a higher tolerance for digestive discomfort. while others argue that chronic conditions like irritable bowel syndrome or severe acid reflux were likely rampant but simply not diagnosed or described in modern medical terms. It's a fascinating look into how ancient bodies coped with a diet that was, by modern standards, incredibly challenging. The lingering scent of last night's feast, that peculiar blend of garum, roasted meat, and slightly stale wine, would probably cling to your clothes and hair, serving as a constant reminder of your gastronomic ordeal. You'd spend the day trying to air yourself out, to escape the pervasive odors of the banquet. It wasn't just a memory, it was a physical presence, following you throughout your day. In essence, the Roman morning after was a far cry from the serene relaxation you usually associate with waking up. It was a battle against your own body, a reckoning for the night's excesses. You learned that the cost of lavish Roman hospitality wasn't just monetary, it was paid in acute physical discomfort, chronic ailments, and the distinct possibility of a foodborne catastrophe. As you finally drift back into a deeper sleep, you're profoundly grateful for modern medicine and the simple, sensible meals that define your own era. The Roman hangover, you conclude, was truly a historical horror. As you slowly emerge from the lingering haze of ancient Roman indulgence, your thoughts drift to a fascinating question. How do the peculiar culinary habits of the Romans, particularly their excesses, echo in our modern world? Are there remnants of their gastronomic philosophy, or perhaps warnings from their digestive woes, that still resonate today? You'll find that while direct parallels are few, the underlying themes of food, status, and health continue to intertwine in surprising ways, some for better, some undeniably for worse. One of the most obvious parallels lies in the concept of conspicuous consumption. Just as the Roman elite displayed their wealth through exotic and elaborate banquets, modern society still uses food as a status symbol. Think of Michelin-starred restaurants, exclusive dining experiences, or outrageously expensive ingredients like truffles or Kobe beef. While we might not be eating dormice, the desire to impress, to show off one's affluence through culinary means, remains a powerful driving force. You might see someone post a picture of an elaborately plated dish on social media, much like a Roman host showcasing his Trojan hog. The medium has changed, but the underlying human desire for display is strikingly similar. Then there's the enduring appeal of the foodie culture. The Roman elite, with their insatiable desire for new flavors and culinary innovations, could be seen as the original foodies. They sought out rare ingredients, experimented with unusual combinations, and celebrated skilled chefs. Today, we see a similar passion for culinary exploration, a constant search for unique dining experiences, and an appreciation for gourmet ingredients. While hopefully without the lead poisoning, the spirit of gastronomic adventure is very much alive. You yourself, by delving into Roman culinary history, are participating in a modern form of this intellectual and sensory curiosity. However, the Roman banquet also serves as a potent cautionary tale regarding excess and its impact on health. While we don't deliberately consume lead-laced wine or fermented fish guts in every meal, the modern world faces its own epidemic of diet-related diseases. Obesity, diabetes, and heart disease are rampant, often linked to diets high in processed foods, sugar, and unhealthy fats, a modern form of overindulgence, perhaps more insidious because it's so widespread and normalized. The Roman senator suffering from gout after a feast isn't so far removed from a modern executive battling high cholesterol after years of rich, unhealthy meals. The ailments might differ, but the root cause of dietary imbalance is eerily similar. A common historical fact about Roman feasting is its role in social bonding and political networking. This aspect is still very much alive today. Business deals are sealed over lavish dinners, friendships are forged during shared meals, and family gatherings often revolve around abundant feasts. The act of breaking bread together, of sharing sustenance, remains a fundamental human ritual for building relationships and strengthening communities. Whether it's a casual dinner party or a formal state banquet, the underlying social function of food endures. The Roman reliance on strong flavors, particularly garum, to mask less than fresh ingredients also finds a strange echo in modern food processing. While we have refrigeration and food safety standards, the food industry still uses various additives, preservatives, and flavor enhancers to extend shelf life and make food more palatable. Think of the complex ingredients lists on processed snacks, or the artificial flavors designed to mimic natural ones. A lesser-known detail about Roman seasoning is their use of asafoetida, a pungent resin with a strong onion, garlic-like aroma, which served as a flavor substitute for expensive spices or to mask less desirable tastes. This concept of using strong flavors to compensate for other deficiencies, or to create a desired taste profile, is a continuous thread throughout culinary history. Historians still debate the true legacy of Roman cuisine on subsequent European culinary traditions. Some argue that Roman recipes and techniques, particularly those found in Apicius, laid the groundwork for medieval and Renaissance European cooking, influencing the use of spices, sauces, and elaborate presentation. Others contend that the fall of the empire led to a significant break in culinary continuity, and later traditions developed independently, with little direct influence from ancient Roman practices. It's a fascinating academic discussion that highlights the complex and often fragmented nature of cultural transmission over centuries. Even the idea of the detox or cleanse after periods of overindulgence can be seen as a modern parallel to the Roman practice of purging or fasting. While we use scientifically formulated drinks or strict dietary regimens, the underlying desire to reset the body after a period of excess is universal. It's a recognition that our bodies have limits, and that continuous indulgence has consequences. A lesson the Romans learned, perhaps the hard way. After every grand banquet, the theatricality of Roman banquets, with their live birds and disguised dishes, also finds modern counterparts in molecular gastronomy or experiential dining. Chefs today create dishes that play with perception, texture, and unexpected elements, aiming to surprise and delight diners in ways that go beyond mere taste, while the ingredients are hopefully more palatable. The spirit of culinary performance, of treating a meal as an artistic spectacle, is a direct descendant of the Roman approach. Ultimately, while the specifics of ingredients and cooking methods have changed drastically, the core human relationship with food, as sustenance, as pleasure, as a social tool, and as a source of both health and illness, remains remarkably consistent. The Roman banquet, in all its strange, stomach-churning glory, offers a unique window into these timeless dynamics, reminding us that the lessons of history, even boring ones, often hold surprising relevance for our lives today. It's a testament to the enduring power of food to shape cultures, define social norms, and, occasionally, wreak havoc on your digestive system. As the grand Roman banquet, in all its peculiar and pungent glory, finally recedes into the annals of history, you find yourself in a quiet, contemplative space. The lingering sense of garum and the phantom aches of ancient indigestion have begun to fade, replaced by a gentle stillness. You've journeyed through a world where food was both a luxury and a literal test of endurance, where wealth dictated the menu, and where the line between culinary delight and digestive disaster was often blurred. You consider the Roman elite, meticulously planning their feasts, not just for taste, but for spectacle. The image of the peacock reassembled with its feathers, the Trojan hog bursting forth with hidden birds. These weren't just meals. They were carefully choreographed performances, and for a moment, you almost feel a pang of sympathy for them. Caught in a cycle of needing to outdo each other, to push the boundaries of gastronomic excess, even at the cost of their own comfort. Imagine the pressure, the social anxiety, of hosting such an event, hoping your dormice were plump enough, your garum pungent enough, your wine sufficiently aged and, perhaps, lead-infused. Then there's the broader picture of Roman health, a fascinating contrast between their impressive infrastructure and their often unwitting self-sabotage. the aqueducts bringing fresh water, the public baths offering communal cleansing, yet juxtaposed with the widespread use of lead in their cooking vessels and the inherent risks of a society without refrigeration or a true understanding of germ theory. It's a paradox, a reminder that even the most advanced civilizations have their blind spots, their practices that, in hindsight, seem almost unfathomable. You realize how profoundly grateful you are for the mundane conveniences of modern life, the refrigerator hum, the sealed package, the simple knowledge that your meal won't give you a chronic illness. The common Roman, toiling away with their bowls of pulse and their simple vegetable stews, perhaps lived a less glamorous, but ultimately healthier, life. Their diet, born of necessity, inadvertently shielded them from many of the ailments that plagued their opulent counterparts. It's a quiet irony, a historical whisper that sometimes, less truly, is more, especially when it comes to what you put into your stomach. Their strength was in their simplicity, their resilience a testament to a life lived closer to the earth. As the final images of ancient Roman banquets dissolve, you're left with a sense of wonder at the sheer diversity of human experience. Even within something as universal as eating, food is never just sustenance. It's culture, it's status, it's history. And tonight, you've tasted a small, unsettling, but utterly fascinating slice of it. Now, as the last vestiges of this historical feast fade, and the quiet hum of your surroundings lulls you gently, let your mind clear. Release any lingering thoughts of exotic meats or questionable sauces. Just breathe softly, letting the silence envelop you. Allow the gentle currents of peace to carry you, far from the banquets and the bustling streets of ancient Rome, into a deep, restful sleep.